Hello and welcome to another edition of Tech About Town, brought to you by Communitech. I'm Alex Kinsella.
And I'm Rosie Del Campo.
Today we've got an episode of lions and tigers and bears and robots. Oh my. We have Cam, CEO and founder of Real Life Robotics, in the studio.
Right. I just want to clarify, these are not the kind of robots that are like taking over the world, but they might just change, and they are changing how we move stuff around and how we help companies be efficient and actually hire more people. The product can take you so far, but you need that human element, that human connection. So what are you hearing and from people out there that are receiving your technology or learning about real life robotics or even working with you in that respect?
So I've always been a very big believer of people buy from people, for sure. So I think the most valuable IP of an organization is the folks that work there, not necessarily the things that you're building, because those people are what brought that IP into that organization. And if you take care of them and keep them happy, you'll continue to build a pretty strong culture of people that want to work there. And that's where you can get the good stuff for a company to grow. What are we hearing out in the market? So we're very proudly Canadian, almost too proudly Canadian sometimes. I've spent a good portion of I've spent all of my career, for Canadian companies. We've since taken a lot of them global, but I spend a lot of time being a big proponent for Canada. And if you spend some time on my LinkedIn, you'll see there's a lot of that, buy Canada, focus on Canada. Hey, come on, Canada, we should be doing more, better, faster, stronger. We are really, really focused right now on supporting Canadian businesses, on growing this Canadian economy, and on enabling our Canadian clients to be more competitive in their own respects. So as it's focused on delivery, right? We're a robotics delivery company. That's where we started, and what we're doing is we're helping Canadian organizations, small businesses, large businesses, to keep their competitive edge and to keep money in their pockets wherever they can. And we're telling that as a solid Canadian brand. And I'm getting a lot of positive feedback on that narration of people really saying, we like the fact that there's a Canadian organization that is building and growing Canadian IP and a story, but it does have some global growth opportunities. That's kind of cool.
And you have a number of exciting projects going on, or that you've already participated in: the Toronto Zoo, now Pitch Kitchener. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So when I started this, I've always been aware that at least in what I've done, I try to find some really large organizations that you can scale with, because there's the amount of effort it takes to sell a robot experience to a small mom and pop operation might kind of be the same energy you need to go and sell something to Walmart, and then at the end of it, you've got a small mom and pop that only buys the one, or you've got the Walmart that buys many. So and that's just because selling a robot experience is still a new thing for folks. It's really scary. You need to hold their hand, walk them through this weird thing called robots and automation. They're not really sure what it is and how it works, and people have a lot of misconceptions of where the product is and where the industry is versus where it actually is, right? People still think that robots and automation is like that Will Smith movie and robots are taking over the world and they're all super intelligent, and it's just not that yet. We'll get there at some point, but we're not quite there yet. So it's a lot of education and a lot of walking customers through this complex journey. And so that's sort of where we started, and I wanted to find some really cool marquee customers that we can engage with. The Toronto Zoo was a great one to start with. They're highly so some stats on the zoo: world's largest zoo by space, 700 acres.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I've never been.
Yeah, I think the second one's Beijing, 300 and some odd acres. Yeah. But the largest accredited zoo in the world is the Toronto Zoo. They have 3,000 animals, 300 different species. They move 3.5 tons of animal food every morning from a central kitchen location to all the different compounds, the animal facilities. And they were struggling with the logistics of that, finding people to do the job and then having it economically and environmentally sustainable for them. And so we introduced a solution with robotics to have some of that work being done with robots, and then you scale up from there as you grow. But you got to prove it out somewhere because everybody walks before they run. And that was kind of one of the first kicks at the can was that, and that was some great exposure, obviously. But we learned a lot from that experience. We learned a lot about the hardware component of delivery. We learned a lot about where the gaps are in the software and what needs to be filled in. We learned a lot about the service itself and how to operate a delivery experience. We then took that experience, all those learnings, and we were able to go to a few other places. Most notably was with the city of Markham. So we got an opportunity with the city of Markham to be Canada's first robotics company approved for municipal operation. So kind of exciting for us. It's a Canada first. It's an industry first. It's a big deal for the robotics industry in Canada, for tech founders, for the Canadian ecosystem. There are other companies that have tried to put robots into Canadian streets, but without the proper approvals. And at some point, if it doesn't pan out, and the government is not on your side, I mean, I learned from years ago, if you don't properly engage with government stakeholders, you might be in a position of a challenge at some point in the future, and it can be detrimental to the business. So the more that you can engage with them, the more likely you're going to make sure that you're covering all those bases. So we did that with Markham. What we then did was turn that into an opportunity to put robots onto the road or onto the sidewalks and the bike lanes and perform deliveries. So remember, I mentioned we learned from some hardware. We building our own robots. We learned some of the pitfalls and the challenges of creating a hardware business. I learned from the investment side how difficult that can be, and I also learned from the cost side and then the implementation side how it can be. And it echoes what I experienced at the last organizations that I was a part of, and how much energy and time and work and money it took to turn on a hardware manufacturing business. But we had to go through the cycles. We had to figure it out. We had to learn from ourselves and see how it worked. So we did that. So turned that into an opportunity to then partner with other hardware companies that made really good pieces of equipment. We brought those into our Markham experience and became a delivery services company. And in doing that, we not only went through the cycles to learn how complicated it is to make hardware work in a public space, how to perform a proper delivery experience, but then we've turned that into our own ConOps that we then are using to expand to the next opportunity.
What's ConOps?
ConOps. So you're going to go back and edit this part,
Yeah, sure.
but ConOps is
Maybe.
what the hell does it stand for? It's like modus operandi. It's ops is for operation. Con is like
Conventional?
no, not com. It's like the way that you do stuff. Your process. ConOps.
Okay.
Your ConOps. Whatever the hell con stands for. It's short term for something.
You know what? I'll add to the show notes. We'll figure it out.
There you go. Edit that out so it don't sound super dumb.
It's super fun.
Anyway, so what we did was we took those learnings and we took that process that we built, and we've now taken it to our next really exciting opportunity, which is also with the city of Markham. We are launching May 1st with our friends at Skip the Dishes, and we will have robots in downtown core of Markham doing live deliveries for the rest of the summer, and as far as we can see into the future, robots will be doing deliveries from local brands right to the end customer.
Well, the first part in Markham, the first project, what was that delivering? Because it was municipal, so it was like the city was delivering.
Nope. So that was food as well.
Okay.
Yep. So that was food. So
Yeah.
so the backstory there. Again, I'm a storyteller, so just deal with it.
Yeah.
The
fine.
the backstory there is we were luckily enough to get into an opportunity with the folks at Canadian Food Innovation Network, CFIN, and they give us some funding to effectively build out the playbook for the delivery of food using robotics in Canada. It was a pretty cool mandate for us to have, and we took that really seriously. And through the zoo and all the other experiences, we were really building on that whole understanding and the ultimate report. And so it was really nice when we got sort of the opportunity with Markham to do that work, because we could put it to test in the real world. So that was our own effort to understand and build the playbook on how to do deliveries with food in an urbanized space. That's what that was. So that was what that trial was, right? We had to do that again. We had to do our own cycles. We had to learn. So was it going to be our robot? Was it going to be other robots? Was it going to be both? We went through the learnings to figure out how to properly do this, with an economic and environmentally sustainable mindset, do it profitably, and do it repeatably, that we can scale into something large. That's what we did under this program. Now we've taken that experience and we've brought it to Skip and said, we're ready to turn this on to give you guys the ability to be the first aggregator, the first delivery company in Canada to leverage robotic systems to do delivery and help improve your story, your brand, and more importantly, a better experience for their clients.
What's that like? So you have a fleet of robots that Skip the Dishes can call to send to a restaurant and then pick up food and then deliver to...
That's right.
That's it.
Yep. So as I mentioned, one of the things we wanted to do in building our own robots and learning what was a good and a bad robot and what robots needed to look like, we also then we went out to the market and saw what other hardware companies that also had robots, what they had and how they were doing things. And one of them that we trialed a few of them, and the one that we really landed on is the folks at KiwiBot. They're deployed at 20 campuses down in the US and have a really solid product. And so, our engagement with them is, let's bring this technology up into Canada and deploy it into all these customers that we have. So a combination of their systems and our software create now this solution that I can go into Canadian businesses and deliver for them.
You've really grown from making your own robots to now being like basically robot agnostic, and you have the platform to manage routing and execution.
Yeah, and a full delivery services, right? So at the end of the day, we've seen this from, and I've seen this from just years of being in the robot world. It's 15 years for me here. Customers don't particularly care about what the robot is, what wheels look like, what the power systems are. They don't care what sensor it is, what kind of compute you have. Is it an NVIDIA Orin versus a whatever? They don't care. They just want their food delivered, or they just want their floor cleaned, or they want their bridge inspected. And the details are somewhat irrelevant. So customers sort of assume that when they engage in this, in our case, in a delivery experience, they assume that the robot and the hardware and the software are just good. They just work. Yeah. They want the end result. They want the economic and the sustainable value. They want the burrito. They don't want the details are irrelevant. So we wanted to build out and go through that experience ourselves to make sure that we had it all right, so that when we went out into the market with our major clients, like landing a big client like Skip is no small feat, but it then becomes doubly important to execute on it, because then you can look really bad if you don't. So we wanted to go through that learning experience to make sure that we were ready to deliver on such a big client.
You talked earlier about with the Toronto Zoo and the experience of seeing, if you're attending the zoo, if you're walking through the zoo and you see a robot come by, I generally would think that might be not a shocking thing, but just, it's a surprise. I see a robot driving around delivering something. I thought that, and then two times this year, I've been in a Walmart where AvidBot's cleaning robot has come down the aisle. I, being a geek, I'm like, oh my God, look, it's an AvidBot. It's made in Kitchener. This is so great. And like my wife and my kids are like, yeah, whatever. And they just keep walking. So do you think though, like that kind of general, what's your experience with that? Are people still kind of shocked when they see a robot now delivering something, or are they like my family and they just don't care?
Yeah, I don't know if shocked is the word.
Not shocked, but
yeah, there's potentially some nominal interest. I think it also depends on the robot and how that robot is designed. So I sold those robots, actually, all the robots to Walmart. Yeah, that was me.
That was you.
Yeah. The difference with those robots and my robots, as an example, is those robots, I mean, they're larger. They're obviously quite large. But there isn't that, there wasn't a lot of design around, or thought in the design around the human element. So making it a human looking, right? When you humanize something, it changes a little bit how people perceive it. So that's a utility robot. It does a wonderful job of cleaning the floor, but it doesn't have a funny face on it. It doesn't engage as much. So yeah, a geek like you says, this is cool, I want to talk about it. But to your kids, it doesn't look much like just a big gray box. Whereas, for example, our robots, we even did this back at the zoo. We did a lot of research to figure out what the face should look like on bubs, on our robot bubs. There's been studies done in Korea on what is the most friendly or appealing looking face, eyeballs, smiles, how big is the smile, is it have teeth, like all that. There was a study, people did work on that. And they're doing work here in Waterloo, at the University of Waterloo. They look at that, right? The human interface component of robots. And so we did that. We put those faces on our robots, made them look friendly, and the engagement changes. So now kids are suddenly interested in it. People hold the door open for it. They give them names, right? One of the examples with our partner is there was a situation where the robot interacted with a car. So it got hit by a car or something, like a weird scenario, car hits it. So those robots had personalities. People liked them, right? They're like part of the ecosystem of the campus. So that robot gets hurt. It's like when a person got hurt. So the next day they got a big sticker of a Band-Aid, put it on the robot, put him back in action, and sent him back. All is good. That stuff goes viral. People love that. So as soon as you humanize that piece of equipment, it changes how it interacts. So what we're talking about is, in public spaces, in public infrastructure, a piece of equipment that's going to be driving around in that environment, we'll want to make sure that it's engaging and it's not a scary thing, and that people want to work with it, because if they want to work with it, they're going to want to, in this case, order again from it. If that experience is a happy and engaging and fulfilling and valuable experience, you're going to keep doing it. So we put that energy and effort into making sure that that's the types of equipment that we put out there.
I find all of that fascinating. And I've seen the face on Bubs. He stole the show at the Fast Track Cities showcase last November when you were there, which led to the Pitch Kitchener pilot. But it's just so interesting to know the amount of work that goes into making this personal and having that human connection. I'm also sure this question comes up often when you're talking about robot delivery service on the streets and less of a controlled environment. How do you contain that? How do you control that from a safety standpoint, or is there interference at all with other humans, or like you mentioned, like a vehicle, and how do you stay ahead of that?
So that's part of the learnings as well. You can't predict in a public space. The more predictable the environment, the easier robot deployment generally is. But you can't always predict as you get into more in the public ecosystem, the public sphere. So what is built into the robot is some pretty significant intelligence. So there's a lot of sensors on it. So it has full environmental awareness. So it knows where it is in space. It also is seeing the environment that it's operating in, and as a result, the algorithms that run and the autonomy that runs on the unit itself puts it in a situation where if it was to get close to a human or object or whatever, then it's going to stop. If the robot is going to be in that fixed position for too long, it's going to call home. And so there's always a human in the loop. In pretty much every robot experience that kind of is out there on the planet, there's always a human in the loop, right? That goes back to that. It's not all a Will Smith movie driven by some, virtual cloud thing. There is a human in the loop for most robots at some point, because there's always going to be an edge case that nobody's thought about just yet. So you program that in. It's a learning experience for the engineers, for the robot, for the operations folks. But there's going to be, in our case, we've got a human in the loop that can enter into that robot via our remote operations team, if and when it needs to. The rest of the time, it's fully autonomous, and it has all its own capacity to navigate through complex environments. And as you get more and more into those spaces, the system itself it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we're always learning, and as soon as one learns, they all learn. That was the nice thing about that Walmart experience, for example, was we spent the time and did the cycles to go into that client to learn how they performed operations, to make sure that our robot did what it needed to do. We then did the code and did the development effort required to make that robot effective and operational in that space. But the cool part with robots is they scale extremely well. So when you build that perfect employee in robot form, you just hit copy, then you hit paste, and then you've got a second perfect employee, assuming those variables are largely the same. And so in places like a Walmart, where there's large, but they're largely similar, right? Walmart builds their business on scalability. So all the Walmarts kind of look the same. You walk into one, you know where everything's going to be. And they do that by design, which also makes it really nice from a robot's perspective. That gets back to the more predictable of an environment.
I was going to say, like, one of the, not challenges, but maybe one of the pushbacks or questions on automation is, does it replace people in jobs? And I always think of, like, again, if you think about ClearPath in manufacturing, or AvidBot's example in Walmart, where it's cleaning, you're really taking a task that is mundane and automating it, and then freeing up your more skilled talent to actually go and do work that needs to get done. So if you're in a Walmart, just someone pushing a cleaning robot is invaluable. Someone stocking shelves or serving customers is. Do you kind of see, how do you see that in terms of food delivery?
Yeah, great question. So the reality is, in the food delivery market, the delivery companies are not able to hire enough people. They don't have enough drivers to do the job, so that's a service suffer as a result, and their clients aren't happy. So what we've been able to do with this experience alone, with just this Markham opportunity, we're hiring 30 people. So we're bringing 30 jobs to Ontario. They're all upskilled from, it might have been a courier, now it's a robot driver, a robot operator, somebody involved in the robot experience. But we're bringing 30 jobs into this ecosystem. So having a real economic impact. But the reality is, if a customer has 11 jobs open, and there's only 10 people that are available for those roles, but some of those jobs are a job like, a role like doing that delivery. If that role could be done by a robot, which is not an enjoyable job for a lot of folks, the dull, dirty, and dangerous jobs, those are what kind of robots tend to fill. That's the 3Ds, we call it. But that allows that human being, who's infinitely more capable, smart, intelligent, and useful than a robot, to move into that much more skilled and difficult role to fill. And that means an upskill. So what we tend to find with a robot, the adoption of robots within organizations, is that everybody gets lifted up a little bit. All the jobs move to higher value, higher task. That means higher income, and that means a happier employee, generally speaking. It was important to me to everybody understand that we're really narrowly focused on doing this the right way. And so we're going through those cycles. I use that term a lot. One of the cool things about the Markham trials that we did was there was a very specific brand. So talking about Canadian businesses and making sure that they're competitive and giving them a reason to be here and want to stay and grow and be profitable. There was a very specific brand as a sushi restaurant that happened to be on the second floor of this mall that we were doing our home base from. And they really weren't getting the foot traffic that they wanted. They weren't sure about delivery, but they weren't getting the foot traffic that they needed, and they were actually considering leaving entirely, shutting their business down and just going away. And so as part of the trial, we said, hey, why don't you guys get involved in this experience and be a part of the robot delivery story. And what ended up happening was, not only have they decided to stay because of the success and the positive vibes that came out of being able to do delivery with robotics, but they ended up signing a longer term contract with the vendor there to stay, because it became such an obvious path for them to move to robotic delivery. I really love that story, because it shows that, not only we talked about taking jobs, whatever, like by putting a robot into an environment where you can enable a new delivery experience, we actually, like I said, we're hiring 30 people, but I'm also enabling a brand to stay, grow, be profitable, and ultimately we'll hire more people, right? So huge value can come out of this kind of experience.
It's real economic impact.
It's real economic impact.
For people.
Yeah.
You've been in robotics, you said, for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
What role would you say Waterloo Region's tech ecosystem has played in your journey as a founder?
I would say it's been almost all of it. So I went to Waterloo, graduated in the early 2000s, and then just sort of stayed here. Waterloo is extremely well known as, tech hub, but very much a robotics hub. And there's a lot of wonderful Canadian success stories that have come out of this town. robotics companies that started, often with Waterloo students or something to do with the University of Waterloo, and then grown through ecosystems like Communitech and Velocity and what have you to become a huge player, not only in Canada, but on a global scale. We have some unbelievable talent here. We have some great programs that support and foster that talent. And then we have the school system that creates some of those talented people. Waterloo would be the MIT of the North, is what some people would call it. At least that's what people used to call it when I was back there. The MIT of the North.
MIT is the Waterloo of the South.
That's a good one too. Yeah, there you go. Okay. But yeah, the ecosystem has been it's been wonderful. There is a lot of credibility as well that comes from being involved in Waterloo. So when either talking to a client or an investor or if somebody overseas, Waterloo's known. Hey, I'm from the Waterloo ecosystem. Hey, I'm from UW. Or hey, our business is founded in Waterloo. That word and that term is known enough. I mean, it started the co-op program. The big global co-op program kind of came out of the ideas of Waterloo, right? And that's now been replicated across the planet. And then if you look at Silicon Valley, a good portion of Silicon Valley, not only the founders, but just the people that are working in there, they're all coming out of Canada, and a lot of those guys are coming out of Waterloo.
Well, speaking of ecosystem, as a segue into what you're doing with City of Kitchener.
Yeah, so building on the Waterloo story, so one of the things that was great was we got the opportunity through Communitech to participate in the Fast Track Cities program. So we went through that cycle and learned a lot, actually, which was great to see. We also then got the opportunity to become some of the finalists, got to pitch, and that pitch won us some money through that program. But the cool part about it, and what I really enjoyed about that program, was the City of Kitchener was involved as well as one of the judges, and irrespective of how you performed on the pitch, if the idea was of interest to the judges, they had the opportunity to sort of pursue as a separate engagement. And City of Kitchener did that with us. They liked what we had talked about. They liked the idea of robotics and delivery and our software system. And so we engaged with them and ultimately turned that into a contract that now Real Life Robotics has, which is to provide software and services for the City of Kitchener for their automation systems. And we're focusing right now on the golf course. So they have a couple of city-run golf courses. We're starting with the Dune Golf Course, and we are going to be having our solution on site starting in June area. We're going to be helping them to manage some of their automation systems that they have at the zoo. We're going to be adding, or at the golf course. We're going to be adding some IoT sensors that help us to enrich the data that we're providing them, and then we're going to be putting some robots on the golf course as well to help manage food and beverage.
Nice.
We can get a beer.
Yeah, we're not going to start with beer.
Okay.
Unfortunately, when you get into Canadian law and smart serve, we got to be careful of that sort of thing. So it's funny enough, though, there is so much other opportunity. In addition to just beer, there is food and beverage that has good margin that golf courses would like to continue to sell and want to put into the hands of guests. That's important. There's also an innovation piece. The reality that still exists today, and I think will for some time, is that any organization that adopts and implements robotics, in addition to being economically valuable, which is the reason why you should be buying robots, you also get that nice little innovation bump.
Yeah.
And the little story of the brand that says, hey, we have robots and the other guy doesn't. So you should buy from us, or you should shop at us, or you should work with us because we're cool, we're innovative, we're thinking.
I was just thinking, can you build the first Smart Serve certified robot?
I could do anything. Yeah, you want to do it with me?
I mean, I got Smart Serve certified. So if I can, I feel like a robot could.
Yes.
And I've never used it again.
Well,
I've only ever used it once.
Hey, you know what? Let's have cameras on the robots, and the whole idea of Smart Serve is that somebody is just making sure that you're safe to continue consuming. So why not have a robot with a camera, and that camera just has Alex behind it, who's
checking,
making sure.
I like that.
On a golf course. I mean, on a golf course, what's the value of a robot on a golf course? again, golf courses are struggling. Half of golf courses in North America are struggling to find labor. Their number one problem is labor. So not enough people want to work there. Okay, check. Now you've got a labor problem, and you've also got a desire to make more revenue, and you can't put the people that you need to in the right places to drive that revenue. So what other ways can you drive revenue? Well, having a robot, not only can we solve some logistics problems of moving product around the facility, right, to the halfway house, doing back and forth kind of fulfillment, but also having that robot be a tool set to allow that golf course to engage with their guests, deliver margin producing product, food, beverage, supplies, but also keep pace of play going, which is really important for a golf course as well. If everybody bunches up at the center at hole 10, or just before after hole 9, everybody bunches up grabbing a hot dog, that's a problem. Yeah. So let's keep people moving so that we can get more people into our golf course. And the way that we do that is we say, you just keep golfing, and we'll just bring you your stuff.
This is why I only play best ball tournaments, because I'm the worst. And it's great if I can just keep the pace of play moving. I was going to ask before we jumped into this, we jumped in kind of deep into some conversations, but we usually...
Yeah, have we started yet?
We have.
Oh, okay, good.
We try to do rapid fire, and we forget to do rapid fire questions all the time. So I'm going to ask you rapid fire questions.
Oh, good. Okay.
Just now. And normally we'd use these to kind of get into it, but we're already into it. But I'm going to ask you anyways. From television, film, literature, favorite robot?
Favorite robot? I like WALL-E.
Okay.
WALL-E's a good one.
WALL-E's a good robot.
Yeah, WALL-E's a really good one. WALL-E, and that movie is... It's less of a cartoon and more of a documentary of where the world is going.
Yes,
in a sense. But yeah, I really like the WALL-E robot.
All right. Within towns, you spend a lot of time in KW. What is your go-to restaurant, and then at that restaurant, the go-to item?
Yeah, so I live in Cambridge, and I always want to highlight that this KW space is KWC, and if the mayor of Cambridge is listening, she'll say that she's often not given that C when people talk about KW, but the C part of KW is really important.
It is.
Cambridge is, if not it's damn near the top of the manufacturing hub of Canada, right? There's so much that's built in that town. So I'm going to say that my go-to spot is in Cambridge. It's a place called the Black Badger. It's like my Cheers.
Oh.
It's my jam.
Where's the Black Badger?
It's on the south end of town, in Water Street, right in the old part of town.
Galt?
Yeah, down in
Galt. Yeah. Okay. I should say.
And my go-to is a Guinness.
Guinness always. At the Black Badger.
Always. That's it. That's the jam.
Well, you brought up a good point. I admitted Cambridge. I also omitted the townships, which I should not do.
Yeah.
Considering I spend.
Then you got to spend an hour just going through all the names.
Well, I spend a week.
But say KWC, I would think we should probably get better at saying KWC.
Or because just WR and just be.
Or WR, that's fine.
And just be done.
That doesn't, I don't know if anybody knows what that is, WR, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. KWC means a little bit more.
Does it? Okay. I
don't know, to me it does.
Oh, that's cool.
KW. It's kind of been shortened just KW.
Yeah.
We should say KWZ.
Okay. That'll be the poll in this episode. There you go. Only available on Spotify. But
is that it?
That's where the poll goes. The episode, you can listen anywhere. Well, listen, thank you for joining us today in the studio. We really appreciate you making the trek over from across the street. At Velocity. Shout out to Velocity. So, Rosie, are you a little less afraid of robots now?
I don't think I was ever afraid.
Okay.
I think I just like them even more now, especially after I learned about all of the research that goes into something as simple as their facial expression, right? Like on one hand, I could see why that would be intimidating and kind of scary because we're not used to it yet, but I can really appreciate that.
Yeah, I was definitely, not before this episode, but in my younger days, I maybe a little bit more anti-robot than I am today. And now I feel like I can walk through Walmart and not be scared to death when an Avid bot comes by. So it was, anyways, it was a good conversation. But before we go, we don't have to listen to, it's our pleasure to listen to Alexis Conrad from Elevate IP, who's going to fill us in with an IP minute.
It's usually the silliest and most simple mistakes that I have seen turn into the biggest horror stories. Earlier in my career, this is one of my favorite horror stories. I won't name the company, They are a manufacturing firm, and they had about 85% of their market share. And their differentiator was the layout, basically the layout of their floor, factory floor. They were able to do quicker and bigger output than any of the competitors. And they were growing and they were capturing even more market share. And what ended up happening is somebody new in HR was told, we've got to figure out a new recruitment strategy. And they're like, okay, you're new, you're younger in your HR career, you haven't had any IP education yet. They're like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a new page to our website. And it is going to talk about how awesome it is to work here and all the things that people know how to do in HR. But they took some photos. They went to a mezzanine in the manufacturing facility, and they literally took photos of the layout of the manufacturing floor, put it on the website. It never got up through to the executive team of what photos were being used. And basically their competitor, their closest competitor, figured out in the glance of one photo what they were doing different to allow for a higher output, a quicker output. And their business, they just started losing market share. It was so quick. And fast forward to, I think it was about 36 to 40 months later, they were barely surviving because somebody had figured out essentially their trade secret. And their trade secret was the layout of their factory floor. So how do you prevent that? IP education at all departments within a company. HR needs an IP education beyond what just is a clause in an employment contract that says what the IP rules are. They need to understand the implications of trade secrets. Like, what is a secret to this company that we don't want announced? But yeah, that's one of my favorite horror stories.
Well, that was a scary story about IP. It was. If you want to learn how to avoid those pitfalls that Alexis scares us with in different episodes, you should visit communitech.ca and learn more about Elevate IP and its programs that are currently available for founders across Ontario and Manitoba.
We're here to help you start, grow, and succeed in many ways.
And avoid IP pitfalls. I've actually forgotten the whole IP thing at the end of it, like what we're supposed to say, but it's fine. I'll cut it from I'll cut it from another episode. It's a Crown Corporation. It's not a Crown Corporation. Wait, Elevate IP isn't. Communitech and Invest Ottawa and
North Forge
are not Crown Corporations. Thanks for listening. We're going to edit a bunch of that out. Thanks for listening. As always, if you want to learn more about what Communitech can offer tech leaders here in Waterloo region, visit communitech.ca, or you can connect with them on social media at Communitech on pretty much every single platform. Even X, which I learned last week, is the school board stopped. City of Cambridge stopped. We're still there. It's cool. Stuff happens.
It does.
I guess.
It does.
I don't know. Are you still on it?
I have it. I have an account, but how active a user I am, that's
I
questionable.
deleted mine. Gone. I'm happier.
You're not alone.
Yeah. Anyways, that's it. I'm going to edit all that out. It'll be fine. It'll be fine when I do it. Okay. It'll be fine.